Podcast streams are activated. Over the next 45 minutes you will be informed and entertained. Welcome to the podcast that breaks down Washington football team news and updates from the world of sports.
We talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
I'm taking back this mind. And everything's gonna be just like it used to be.
After Practice with Lake Lewis starts now.
Welcome everyone. After Practice with myself, Lake Lewis. And this show is going to be, it's so many things to talk about with the Washington football team. Naturally, it starts with Dwayne Haskins. And, earlier today I was in my car, in my SUV, and, I was just listening to some of the local radio stations in the nearby DMV. Can't mention their names, but I was checking them out. And I'm just listening to callers calling in. I'm listening to some of the hosts, even some of my colleagues, and they're just destroying Dwayne Haskins, saying it's over. It's time for a change. And I don't know. Maybe I feel like I understand where some of the frustration's coming from, with this kid. I get it. He has some throws that are errant, that are in the dirt, that are too high for his receivers. I get all of the above. But I thought we were told, I thought we were supposed to foresee these things happening if you're going through a growth process. And we were told by Ron Rivera a long time ago. One of the first things he said when he came in as the new coach for the Washington football team was that Dwayne Haskins was going to be their guy, but that he was going to have to earn his keep. And on top of that we were going to have to understand that there were going to be some growing pains. What have we not seen so far with this team? I mean, this is not a football team that's going to win the Super Bowl anytime soon. And I think what we're starting to understand is that the NFC East is a bad division. 8-8 probably will win the division for you this year. But is that enough for you to warrant thinking realistically that it's time to move the quarterback out of the picture? So for me, Dwayne Haskins still has some time. I think the Washington football team should allow for this kid to grow, still see what you have in him, because let's face it, again, you're not going anywhere this year. There's just not enough talent on this team for them to make a serious run at anything. So for my money, you have two generational type quarterbacks coming out of this year's, college ranks. Trevor Lawrence at Clemson and Justin Fields at Ohio State. Those two guys to me are those dudes. They're next level type of players. And for me, if you're a Washington supporter, you need to see what they have in Dwayne Haskins. And I ask you, I preface this by asking you, what do you want for him? What do you want from Dwayne Haskins right now? If Washington, let's just say they beat the Ravens last week and he only threw for 100 yards, would you be content with that because the team won? Would that mask and hide his deficiencies because, again, they won? No. To me, that answer to that has to be no. But I think that that's what's happening with fans. Some fans are becoming a little delusional as far as what they want from Dwayne Haskins. He did throw for over 300 yards against the Baltimore Ravens. I don't care that a lot of that came and, the game was out of hand at that point. It's still 300 yards. And if you look at what he threw the week before, 3 interceptions, that's marked improvement. That's what we're talking about here, folks. Are we looking for this kid to improve, or are we looking for him to be lights out and be an all-star at this point in his career? We have to start being realistic here, folks, because the last time I looked, last week against the Baltimore Ravens, Dwayne Haskins had, without question, his best day as a professional. I mean, he didn't throw a touchdown. I get that. But if you look at the numbers last week, those categories, all three categories, attempts at 45, completions at 32, yards at 314, those are all career best numbers for Dwayne Haskins. And I think the overall picture for me is until I see a team lay down and quit, then I don't think there should be a quarterback change. That's the way I look at it. As long as this young football team's competing and not giving up, and we've seen them in the second half look markedly better than what they did in the first half of games, that shows you that they're not quitting on their quarterback, nor are they quitting on their coach. I don't think that's the case in any situation. There's no quit in this football team. They're just outmanned at this point because they have young players that haven't played at the NFL level for a long period of time. After a while, you have to be realistic here. I said before the season started that Washington was going to be a 6-10 football team, 7-9 if everything went well, if the ball bounced the right way for them and they got a couple lucky breaks, 7-9 at best. Well, I think the problem is, again, it goes back to the NFC East. The fact that 8-8 could win you the division. Right now, the Philadelphia Eagles are atop the NFC East division with a 1-2-1 record. I mean, that's pretty bad, but still, that's the way it goes right now. So I think for a lot of Washington football fans, they're seeing this and they're thinking, you know what? Why not us? Why not us? Maybe if we make a quarterback change and you go with Kyle Allen, who, you know, played for Ron Rivera and Scott Turner last year in Carolina with the Panthers, maybe he can steal a couple games or two. But is that the long-term answer? And again, I keep saying that's the problem with the Washington football franchise over the past 2 decades. They've masked their problems with duct tape, and they've held things together, and it appeared that everything was going in the proper direction, but it wasn't going in any direction. It was duct taped. I mean, you hid your deficiencies, and you hid it to the public. You know, we remember some of the quotes, too, winning off the field. It was always those type of things with this franchise. And right now, Ron Rivera go out, and we're going to literally rebuild this thing from the ground up. We're going to do it the right way. We're going to do it with the right culture. We're going to do this the right way. And that's all fans wanted to hear for the longest time. They wanted to hear, okay, they're going to get this done the proper way. Well, they're doing it, and now fans don't like that. Now fans want change. Whenever something goes bad, fans are so quick to bail and jump ship and say, hey, you know what? We've got to change. We've got to fire the coach. I mean, I'm hearing people right now grumbling about Ron Rivera's play calling, about Scott Turner's play calling. Jack Del Rio, the defense doesn't look as good as they should. Come on, guys. You got to be realistic here. That defense has played about as well as they possibly can play, considering that they're waiting for their offense to catch up to them. They're on the field quite a bit, but the last time I looked, they're still in the top 5 in sacks in the NFL. They're still doing some things well. The last time I looked, they're without their best defensive player last week, you know, basically for the past week and a half, because he went out in the second quarter against the Cleveland Browns, and that's a rookie in Chase Young. They also, in my opinion, lost their second best interior lineman on defense in Matt Ioannidis for the season, with a torn bicep. So they're still doing this without all their pieces. Kendall Fuller, who was obviously expected to be their starting, one of their starting corners, he was out for most of the season. He missed the first 2 games, and those were 2 big misses for them. We saw the Eagles going deep on them. They looked a little disoriented in the secondary. Second game against the Cardinals, the same thing. They gave up a couple big plays. Well, the last 2 weeks, the secondary hasn't looked as bad. I get they played against a Baltimore team last week where passing, I wouldn't say is the Ravens' strength. They're a run football team, run-oriented football team. Lamar Jackson makes things happen with his legs, hence 50-yard touchdown run against Washington. And he throws to his tight ends, hence 2 touchdowns to Mark Andrews. So they do what they do best. They did that against Washington. But they weren't a high-flying offense. Well, listen, the Cleveland Browns all of a sudden have found that magic potion on offense. And for my money, Washington played them pretty tough 2 weeks ago in Cleveland. Yeah, they lost, but at one point in the second half, they came back and took the lead. So again, this is a team that's battling. They're not quitting. They're not giving up. And for me, as long as I see that effort out there, for 4 quarters, there's no way, there's no reason, there's no way that you need to bench Dwayne Haskins at this point. You have to see what you have invested in this guy if you're going to invest in him. We all understand that when new coaches come in, they inherit, something that's not necessarily theirs. I don't think Ron Rivera would take this job knowing that he had a first-round quarterback who was just recently drafted and hardly coached up. I don't think Ron Rivera would take this job with the intent of saying, you know what, that's not my guy. I'm going to wait and go with someone else when you have a first-round talent sitting on the board. When you have a first-round talent that's on your roster. I think he knew he could come in here, inherit a pretty, decent defense. You had the second pick in the draft. You knew who you were going to take in Chase Young. And now you could have a formidable defense for a long time coming. Then on top of that, and keep in mind, they also had a first rounder last year on defense, and the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that. So what I'm saying is he knew what he had on the defensive side of the ball. He just needed to be coached up, hence bring in Jack Del Rio as the D coordinator. On offense, I think Ron Rivera is the right person to assess offenses that don't need to be as explosive to win games, because when he was with the Carolina Panthers, they didn't always have the best offenses. They had very good defenses, and they had dominant running football teams in Carolina. They did have an MVP quarterback in Cam Newton, who I was, frankly surprised that they didn't make a run at this offseason. I really was surprised that they didn't make a run at Cam Newton. And I kept saying to myself, what would it look like if they held on to Adrian Peterson and they had pursued Cam Newton and had both those two veteran guys on this roster? We might be talking about a different story, but again, that's wishful thinking because you're talking about two proven veteran players. That's not what we are dealing with here. We're dealing with an unproven quarterback who's trying to prove that he belongs. And yeah, I get when you see the Justin Herberts out there, with the Chargers, when you see him out there throwing it around, when you see Gardner Minshew last year and then continuing this year to be able to do some things, when you see Kyler Murray taking the next step, to being a very good NFL quarterback this year, you start to wonder to yourself, is Dwayne Haskins in that mold? Josh Allen's, having an MVP caliber season for Buffalo this year. You're starting to see these young guys really step to the forefront. And that's the nature of the league right now. The quarterback position, it's never been stronger, in my opinion. 1 through 32, I don't think the quarterback position has ever been as strong in the NFL as far as starters. You've got some dynamic starting quarterbacks in the NFL. If I asked you right now to tell me your top 5 quarterbacks, it might be hard to do. Naturally, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, guys like that are going to be Patrick Mahomes. But do you put Lamar Jackson in the top 5 as far as top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL? It depends on what you're looking for. And he's the reigning league MVP. So again, I get where a lot of the frustration's coming from with fans. They want to see Dwayne Haskins look like some of these guys, but it's a little bit different. Some of these guys are coming from systems in college where it was more pro-oriented as far as their sets, as far as things that the quarterback had to read and look for, as opposed to a spread offense in college where, let's face it, these guys get to the line of scrimmage and all of them set up and look back over to the sidelines and look at their respective position coach or head coach to tell them where the ball's supposed to go, not survey the field. No, it's you need to go to the X. You need to go to the Y. They are telling these guys where they're throwing the football. And that's different coming to the NFL, where now you have to come to the line of scrimmage and survey the best defensive sets and formations you're going to go up against. the best defensive minds that you're going to go up against. That's a lot of information for a 23-year-old to absorb who, again, I say, not making excuses for him, but is on his third NFL coach in a year. It's just a lot for me to absorb, to say, you know what, this guy stinks. They got to sit him. They've got to pull him. No, I don't think it's time for that, folks. I just don't. And if you're hoping and praying that this team goes with, Allen or Alex Smith to steal the division, that's not what you want. I understand the nature of the game is to line up and win, to defeat your opponent. I get it. But again, this football team is not at that point where you should be hoping and praying every Sunday that they're going to steal some games. They're not that good yet. They're just not there. So what you need to have happen is progress with the young players. You need the young players to continuously get better week in and week out, and that starts with Dwayne Haskins. When you go back to his numbers from last year, and I can safely say this because I've actually been on record to say I liked what Kevin O'Connell was doing with him last year. I do. I thought, he was seeing the field differently. He was making big throws. And I understand that they spoon-fed him a little bit at a time. But as the season progressed, you go back to the Giants game where he got injured, he was throwing the ball all over the field. He really was. And I thought maybe they were going to retain Kevin O'Connell. They didn't. He goes out to the Rams, in Los Angeles to rejoin Sean McVay. And you see what they're doing offensively out there. Yeah, they struggled a little bit last week against the Giants of all teams, but, they're still able to do a lot of things, and you see a lot of mixture out there. But if you look at Haskins' numbers from last year to this year, the numbers have improved. And again, is that what you're looking for? I thought it was. If you look at his quarterback rating right now of 80.3, not the highest. I understand that. But it's still better than last year's quarterback rating. In 9 games played last year, he had a quarterback rating of 76.1. So his quarterback rating is better. You can't fault that. If you look at his completion percentage, still needs to be a lot higher than 61%, which it is this year. But last year, it was 58.6. That's improvement. If you look at his passing yards per game, night and day difference. Last year, 151.7. I understand that when Bill Callahan became the coach, he became a run-centric team again. They were running Adrian Peterson quite a bit, as they should have. That was taking pressure off Haskins to have to go out and beat you. And they were playing some pretty decent defenses when Haskins was named the starter. If you recall, his first starting contest was against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. So, hey, that's tough sledding right there. But he averaged 151.7 yards a game last year. This year, 234.8. Not lighting the world on fire, but those are improving numbers. And again, are we going back to improvement or winning at all cost? Because let's face it, if you want to win games, maybe you do go with, Alex Smith even before Kyle Allen. He's a proven winner. But is that going to fix what's been a train wreck of an organization for 2 decades? As far as spoon feeding people, or serving the Kool-Aid every year. Oh, it's going to be better. We're close. Close to what? Close to picking always at number 10 in the NFL draft? Close to being in the middle of the pack but never running with the big boys? Well, they're trying to rebuild this thing from the ground up, and that's all you can ask for. And for my money, that's the proper way to do this. If you ask me, Lake, give me a number for Dwayne Haskins. Give me a number where if he's struggling or if he's just not producing, you pull him. I would say you've got to go at least 4 or 5 more games. They're 1-3. They've only played a quarter of their season. There's still 3 quarters left to the season. If you're telling me that a team is throwing in the towel after the first quarter of a game, then I'm telling you you're a quitter. If you're telling me that it's all going sour after the first quarter of a game and the game's over, I'm calling you a quitter. So that's basically where we're at here. It's one quarter of the season. How many times have we seen this team get up off the mat, after an abysmal first half and play much better in the second half? We saw them pull a game out against the Eagles in the first game where they were down 17 points. We saw, them spot Cleveland, a 10-0 lead, and they came back and took the lead on them in the third quarter. So if you use that same analogy for Dwayne Haskins, if you use the same exact analogy, it's not time to quit. It's not time to bail. It's not time to give up on him. What I'm saying is you've got to take this guy into the third quarter. You've got to take him well into the third quarter before you decide, hey, we got to go a different direction. Well, if that's the case, that means you're talking about week 10, week 11, maybe week 12 before you say, you know what, we've already seen everything we need to see. It's not what we expected. It's not working. And now we're going to be in position to draft one of these two transcendent quarterbacks coming out. I also think the kid from South Dakota or North Dakota, is pretty good too. So there's three quarterbacks that are really good. Three that are good, two that are great. And Washington will have a chance to possibly be in that running if Dwayne Haskins fails. It's just weird. Like I said, when I started this program today, I was just listening to the local media and, being part of the media, it's some of us who are saying you got to be a little bit more patient. But at the same time, we see what you see. We see, why you can be frustrated. We see why you're saying this isn't it. He doesn't have that it or that wow factor to his game. I've heard people say that they didn't like the antics coming off the field, and I call them antics because, he was very animated and very happy and jovial. And, so to me, you could say right now he's just a young player that felt good that he played better, so he was happy about it. Maybe, I'm a little bit more old school. Maybe I would have liked for him to be, not the last guy to come off the field, but maybe one of the first guys to come off the field and get back in the locker room. Not be so happy because you lost and you never accept losing ever. But again, different times, different players, different atmospheres. He played better against Baltimore, and for him, he felt better about himself, So this is going to be the talk of the town for a long time. You know how we talk about quarterbacks here in this market. That's just what we do. We talk quarterbacks at all times. And right now, this is going to be the biggest storyline until it's fixed, until a quarterback lines up behind center and has this team winning and has them winning and they're doing their part. They're, putting the ball up in the air. They're scoring touchdowns. We're going to continue to have this conversation. And for all of you right now, when I just said that we're going to talk about quarterbacks until one lines up behind center and wins. For all of you saying, well, we had that with Alex Smith, not so fast, because I go back to a lot of you out there. Yes, you, my good friends who are checking out this, after practice podcast. And of course, we're family here. I joke with you. I kid with you. I love you guys. We always do this. But yes, some of you were saying that Alex Smith wasn't it either. Alex Smith, he's only throwing for 200 yards a game, if that. He's a game manager, and that's why they let him go in San Francisco, and put Kaepernick in, and that's why they let him go in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes in there. Listen, Alex Smith was a winner, is a winner. Everywhere he's been, he won, and that's what he was doing here. So that's probably the perfect analogy to use. Do you want Dwayne Haskins to be a game manager and the team wins and he's throwing for 198 yards a game? No touchdowns, but no turnovers? Or do you want Dwayne Haskins to look like Patrick Mahomes, where he's putting up 300-400 yards, the offense is flying all over the field, they're looking dynamic in everything that they do, but they're losing? And I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes losing. Obviously, they're Super Bowl champions and look like they're going to be on their way to possibly showdown again this year. But those are the analogies that I keep going with. Do you want a game manager that's winning, or do you want a gunslinger that's losing games. What would that tell you? Would it tell you that Dwayne Haskins has arrived? Because then the cry is going to be, he's doing all those things, but he's not winning. And that's what I'm saying to you folks. I just think that this thing right now is going to take some time. It really is. And the worst thing that you can ask a sports fan is patience. I get it. You don't want to have patience. You want to see your team win. You want to see them compete at the highest of levels. But it's not happening at this moment. Not with this football team. This football team is about guys like Antonio Gibson, who's getting better and better every week. 3 straight games with a touchdown. You're seeing what he can do. This team's about guys like Terry McLaurin, who's rapidly shooting down that he can't be a number 1 wide receiver. I hear everybody out there saying, if they had another Terry McLaurin, he wouldn't have to be Terry McLaurin. He wouldn't have to be forced to be a 1. You can't force a talent that's dominating on the field to be what it is or what it's not. He's a number 1 receiver because he's the number 1 receiver here, and opposing defenses know it. They're double teaming him. They're playing him 1 high, 1 low, and he's still finding ways to catch contested balls. Everything he's caught hasn't always been in between the numbers. Some of them have been, within a foot radius all around him, and he's pulling the ball in with guys draped on him. If that's not a number 1 receiver, I don't know what is. He's a game-changing wide receiver. And we're seeing that right now. It's just hard to say that because Washington really hasn't had a number 1 receiver in a long time. They've had some really good ones, but one never stood out as the guy. Deshaun Jackson was very good. Pierre Garçon was very good. I mean, they had, at one point, Albert Connell, Michael Westbrook. They had some really good receivers collectively, but no one really stood out as the guy, the number 1 receiver. And now you have that. You have it by default, first of all, but the guys claim the spot. And now we're wishing that another guy can emerge opposite him on the outside. That's what you're looking for. So again, I say growth, patience. That's what's going to be needed for this football team. Big time. That's exactly what's going to be needed. So let's do a little quick social media, where you can find me and where you can check me out. So just hang tight.
Follow Lake on Twitter at Lake Lewis. Check out Lake Lewis's Instagram at Lake Lewis Jr.
Folks, this is going to be, again, interesting developments. I mean, when you go on the internet, when you go into your local news channels right now, that's the conversation. It's more so than COVID talk. Washington didn't have workouts yesterday because, of COVID. They're not going to risk bringing in free agent tryouts like they do on Mondays right now because of COVID. And they're going to have to limit how many they do throughout the week because I think you can do 2 or 3. So that's something that should be talked about. But yet we're still talking about Dwayne Haskins and is it time to bench him and, why Washington should do this. 1-3. I did tell someone, a good friend of mine, colleague, Donna Hopkins, we sit next to each other in the press box, have for years. It's my auntie. People don't know that. That's my auntie. But she and I, we're talking, and I said, listen, I said this to her in the 3rd quarter of Sunday's game against the Ravens. I did. I said to her, it's going to be important to see how he finishes this game, as if he can still continue to gather some momentum, talking about Dwayne Haskins. But then I told her next week's going to be the telltale sign for me. And I told her that I'm predicting Washington to beat the Rams. I'm saying that early. Crazy as it sounds, I am. And I'm saying West Coast team coming back 1 o'clock, East Coast game. I know Sean McVay is going to be back in familiar territory, familiar stomping grounds. But that's the type of game where the Rams are tailor-made to be picked off if Washington has any semblance of a good football team. This would be the week that you could see it, okay? Perhaps Chase Young comes back from his injury and plays. That would be a big lift for a defense that only got to Lamar Jackson last week 1 time, snapping a 16 game streak they had where they had multiple sacks in games. They only got one last week. And for the most part, didn't have a whole lot of quarterback pressure on him. I understand, when RG3 came in the game, Daron Payne almost decapitated the guy in the end zone. That was ironic. But at the end of the day, they didn't get a whole lot of pressure on Lamar Jackson, as a lot of teams find out that you can't because the guy's so nimble and elusive and he can get outside the pocket and make things happen. Hence, again, that 50-yard touchdown run. But this is that type of game where everything is set up to see if Haskins can continuously take another step. And it's kind of ironic for me because I look across the board at Jared Goff, for the Rams. And you remember this guy came out, number 1 pick, it was a high first-round draft pick, and he was picked by Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher was with the Rams at the time. And Jared Goff could not get on the field. And then when they did put him on the field his rookie year, he looked absolutely terrible. And it had people questioning if he was an NFL quarterback, period. And I kept saying, you can't go from being a top draft pick, a first-round talent who was a star quarterback in college to just being pure doo-doo. There's no way. That's called coaching. That's called getting people prepared. And hence, they fired Jeff Fisher. They bring in Sean McVay, the Wonder Boy. My boy, that's my dude. They bring him in there, and you see what happens. Coaching, preparation, a system that works for the talent of the quarterback. And look at Jared Goff now. He got broke off last year as far as a big, huge contract extension. And he's the face of their franchise right now. Well, I think maybe Aaron Donald is. I know they don't like to give it to defenders, but defensive players. But Aaron Donald's the face, and Jared Goff is the second face. Okay, how about that? But the point I'm making is that he looks every bit the NFL quarterback now. He looks really good. He's one of the better young quarterbacks in football. If that can happen with him, why can't it happen with Dwayne Haskins? They're very similar in stature as far as size. They both have big arms. They're not the most mobile of quarterbacks. But if you put the right system around the quarterback and the right pieces around that quarterback to excel, that's what happens. For every great quarterback in the NFL, you go to his team and you look at the offenses that they're running, and does it fit the strengths of those quarterbacks? Patrick Mahomes is a rare, rare talent. Might go down as the greatest as far as his arm strength, as far as what he can do with the football. But Andy Reid is calling plays for Patrick Mahomes' arm strength. He's calling plays for what he does best. The one thing about Patrick Mahomes is his accuracy is off the charts. So with that arm strength and accuracy, it's pretty much you can do whatever you want, similar to Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. If you set up a system around a quarterback, you go to Baltimore and you see what they do, a lot of read option. They see what's going to come up before he play action, passes you, and he's thrown to his tight ends quite a bit. But they're letting Lamar Jackson do what he does best. Those are the things that you're going to need from Dwayne Haskins. But Dwayne Haskins needs to find, through his coaching, through Scott Turner, through Ron Rivera, what is it that he actually does best? And right now, it looks like it's the short intermediate passing game. That seems like that's his strength right now, crossing routes with the receivers. And they did an abundance of that against the Ravens this past weekend. I expect that to continue. I would like for them to go, as I keep saying, a little bit more up-tempo, a little bit more no-huddle, and definitely I'd like for him to throw the ball down the field more because, as you saw late in the game against the Ravens with Terry McLaurin, they can do that. They can absolutely throw the ball down the field with his arm, but naturally, when you're not getting the best pass blocking up front, there's really no pocket for him to throw out of a lot of times. I'm not going to dog the offensive line because they have played okay. I think Morgan Moses is playing at the highest level he's ever played at. I really do feel like that. But yeah, they're missing Brandon Scherff right now. Chase Roulier is a good center. They're having some struggles on the left side of the ball. Make no mistake about it. They miss Eric Flowers at left guard. Wes Martin is still growing, still learning the game. And then at left tackle, Jaron Christian is just, to me, he's doing the best he can, but he's not, to me, by any means the long-term solution for them to be the heir apparent to Trent Williams. He's not the guy, in my opinion. Sadiq Charles, who they drafted out of LSU, has yet to hit the field, working back, I think, from a quad injury. So, maybe they're going to give him a look at some point to see what they have in him, because, again, there's a mammoth left tackle coming out of college football from Oregon. And we're talking about maybe a generational tackle in that regard, too. Maybe that's something Washington looks at if they get better play, down the stretch from Dwayne Haskins and feel comfortable going into next year with him. So again, folks, lots of stuff here. As always, you can check me out on social media. You just heard the plug there, but also check us out on Sports Journey, sportsjourney.com, and then on social media on sportsjourney.com. Great writers doing some great stuff, covering the NFL, the NBA, WNBA. So, definitely appreciate their efforts and talents. And then, we've got some podcasts that we're actually have on the site as well. Not just mine, not just this podcast, but you have DJ Bland, has a really nice podcast on the site. You have Wole Akinso, my good friend, from Urban Sports Scene. He has a podcast on the site. And then you have Bob Matthews, has his show, which is on the site as well. So we were trying to give you some different things to listen to, different variety. It's not just football. We cover a lot of different things. As the week goes on this week, we'll talk a little bit more about the NBA Finals, Miami. What did they do the other night? I mean, Jimmy Butler was that guy. Jimmy Butler channeled, his inner Michael Jordan the other night, had a triple-double, 40 points. I mean, just incredible play. And a depleted Miami team has now put the heat, no pun intended, on the Lakers. LeBron James and company, you've got to win game 2. You've got to win game 3 now. And it's imperative. What am I saying here, folks? Game 4, because it's 1-2. Miami got that win, so they're down one game behind the Lakers here. So in game 4, if Miami can win this and even this series up, as Jimmy Butler told LeBron, you guys might be in trouble. LeBron told Jimmy Butler that in the first quarter of game 3. And then Jimmy Butler had the last laugh and told LeBron, you guys are in trouble. So will Bam Adebayo play? Will Goran Dragic play? If they can get those two guys back on the court, man, this could be an interesting series. This could be a very, very interesting series. So I'm looking forward to tonight's contest. It's going to be important to see how this one turns out. But yeah, let's just get some more basketball. And I'm not ready for basketball season to be over just yet. I think the bubble play has been outstanding. You've seen some young guys in the NBA come, just put their name out there. They've put their name on the map. Jamal Murray, before the bubble, you would say he's one of the better young players in the league. Bro, forget that. He's one of the best players in the NBA. I think he put himself in the top 10 just from what he was doing in the bubble. So again, lots of new faces. Miami's got a plethora of nice young players. Tyler Hero is definitely a guy to watch, and he was giving Rajon Rondo the business the other night. So it's going to be interesting to see if game 4 he can continue his hot hand, because Miami's going to need every piece to be perfect, because LeBron James and Anthony Davis are going to come out strong tonight to try to get that big win. So again, folks, lots of stuff that we're going to be talking about as this podcast develops and goes forward. But remember, check us out. This is going to be every day for you. It's your podcast, the people's podcast, so to speak. And, we're going to start opening up some phone lines later on this week, so you can call in and let me know what you think. You can send me some emails as well. So lots more stuff that we're going to be giving you. And then also we're going to have a segment from this podcast. Going forward, we'll have a segment where you'll be able to watch it in video on sportsjourney.com. So lots of things we're trying to do for you, do something different, especially during COVID. Keep your attention out there. As always, folks, make sure you're wearing your mask. Not being political or anything like that, but just being smart, being safe. Make sure you put your mask on. Be responsible around the people around you. All right. So we're going to wrap up today's show. Remember, check us out tomorrow, the day after, and the day after that. We're going to start having some great guests coming on as well. So as always, folks, appreciate you checking me out, taking time out of your day to listen to this. We'll have more coming up tomorrow on After Practice with myself, Lake Lewis.
Now, back to the After Practice podcast with Lake Lewis. Follow Lake on Twitter at Lake Lewis. Check out Lake Lewis's Instagram at Lake Lewis Jr.